So, Destiny 2's episodes haven't been particularly great, and I would like to talk about that, as I don't think they're completely horrible or by any means the worst content we've ever gotten in Destiny 2. It's up there in terms of how mediocre and sometimes even bad it is, but I do think there are a few good things about them. Some less than others, but I'll get to that. So, I believe the best place to start would be Echoes, the first of the episodes that we had gotten. As far as Echoes goes, I think it's a fairly mediocre episode. It's not terrible, but by no means did it blow me away. I enjoyed it. It had a decent start, a decent beginning, and a decent end. I think what made the beginning of Echoes more enjoyable than it would have been otherwise was because of the Final Shape expansion honestly being a pretty good one that had a decent amount of content to indulge in on its own. Adding to Echoes actually made it feel like there was a decent amount of stuff to do in the game overall, and I really did enjoy that. So I liked the beginning of Echoes. It had a decent start, and as far as gameplay goes, the activities that came with Echoes, between the exotic mission, between Breach, most of the activities that specifically came with Echoes were all decent. None of it blew me away, none of it, again, surprised me in any notable way, but it was all enjoyable. The Breach activity is a pretty standard Destiny activity as far as throwing a bunch of enemies at you and doing small mundane tasks in between the genocides. So, and as far as that goes, for me, that's enjoyable for Destiny. I enjoy the power fantasy of destroying entire groups of enemies with just a swing of an arm throwing a grenade. It's enjoyable. I don't think it's perfect. It can get pretty redundant pretty quickly, but all things considered, I enjoy it. Again, the exotic mission is fine, and the weapon that comes with it is actually pretty unique and fun, but by no means is it game-breaking. At least afterwards. When it came out, it kind of was, but as far as gameplay goes, I'd say everything is fine. The addition of Prismatic from Final Shape absolutely added to the build crafting of the game, but that's not specifically Echoes, so I enjoy it gameplay wise. By no means is it terrible, and it's fine. That's really the best way I can put it. It's fine. As far as character writing and story goes, that's also alright. I enjoyed the addition of Failsafe into the story, as I personally like Failsafe. I completely understand, especially in the Red War campaign, why people would find Failsafe annoying and wouldn't really want anything to do with her, but I personally like Failsafe. I don't know if it was the writing, or perhaps I'm biased in the sense of I understand what it's like to be alone for extended periods of time, so perhaps it's an odd angle of sympathy for a character that isn't real. I don't know. I'm talking nonsense, but my point is I like Failsafe. I like Saints, Osiris, and Ikora, as they were, from what I remember, at least the main ensemble that we would hear from in the midst of Echoes and all the activities. They were all written fine and enjoyable enough that I didn't mind it at all. I enjoyed each of their interactions, I enjoyed their writing and their dialogue, and seeing Failsafe not be horribly depressed put a smirk on my face. But where the gameplay I think is overall an average and decent experience, I think the story is lower than average, and it's because of one reason, and with that reason being Maya Sundaresh. To put it simply, I think she's boring. The way that they went about writing her, I just don't think it worked. No offense to any of the writers, to the voice behind Maya Sundaresh, but I just don't think she works as the villain that they tried to make her out to be in Echoes. For me personally, what makes me enjoy a villain are two different angles. Obviously, this can vary. This is simply my opinion, and I'm putting it in a far simpler way, but one of the two ways I can find myself enjoying a villain is making them sympathetic or making them incredibly intimidating. For the former, making a villain sympathetic or making it so that you kind of feel bad about winning a fight against them is a very good way for me to care about their motivations, who they are, why they're going as far as they are, and that doesn't really apply to Maya Sundaresh. At first, she had a somewhat understandable motivation of wanting to bring in a new golden age, but with a twist that she would incite herself. But then they wrote into one of the exotic missions that you went through, her looking for her, her wife, and finding her, only to throw her away as she was her wife, but Maya wanted someone she can control, which is what pushed her to essentially throw away her actual lover, her wife. So there's no angle of sympathy because she's kind of a terrible person that just simply wants to find a wife that she can control and keep her thumb over. So I don't really find any sympathy for her or care for her in any way. But at the same time, she isn't intimidating at all. Intimidation means when a character enters a room, they have a presence. There is a notable shift in the air when they show up. Or think Oryx when he first appeared in The Taken King, and how he completely wiped the floor with the Awoken. And while Marasov didn't plan for that, they still did fight and lose. Whenever Oryx would show up in the campaign, you would think, oh boy, here we go, because he had power. He had a power of taking that we had never seen, and he was Crota's father, an enemy that took a raid to kill. Or even Gaul, well, the Red War campaign wasn't exactly the best. Gaul showed up and he did defeat the Guardians and take away our light, and had intimidation, had a presence. Towards the end of that campaign, it was pretty much all but gone. But at the beginning, it started off with him winning. But with Maya, she doesn't have that. Again, nothing against the voice behind Maya Sundaresh, but it just doesn't work as an upfront villain. I think the best place that she worked was when she was hanging out as Lakshmi, obviously, not the same person, but was hanging out as Lakshmi in the tower during Season of the Splicer. I think that was the best place that she worked as a villain. Granted, wasn't the best role ever, but it worked a lot better than it did in Echoes because of the fact that as Lakshmi was attempting to overthrow the Vanguard's authority through politics, it makes sense that Lakshmi's demeanor would still be very calm and collected. She would have to put on a mask in order to get people to come to her side, for civilians or even Guardians to work with her and want to join forces with her or support her. So it makes sense that politically she would show face. She would stay calm, collected, and appear as the good guy in the situation that she was in. So it makes sense that she would have a very cool and calm demeanor, but that demeanor just doesn't work when it comes to making her an upfront villain, making her not hide her intentions or be anything other than just the villain that wants to control you or kill you. I just don't think that it worked with Maya Sundaresh, and it just resulted in a very boring villain that didn't even have a satisfying conclusion. She floated away and she's gonna do something with the Echo now. That's cool, I guess. I don't know how they could write her to be better. I hope that they do if they get the chance. I don't know. But that was what brought down Echoes for me personally. Everything else was fine, was enjoyable, but what really brought it down for me was Maya Sundaresh, the way that she was written and the way that she was acted out. Again, nothing against the writers or the voice behind her, but it just didn't work and resulted in a very boring and uninteresting villain that didn't have anything to make her enjoyable. No screen presence, no sympathy, or anything else that I could personally think of that made me like her, or even want to hate her. And that's really all I have to say when it comes to Echoes, as it was so far the most average out of the three. But on to the one that I think is less than average, with that one being Revenant. Alright, Revenant. I don't think it's the worst seasonal type content we've ever gotten in D2. I think something like Season of the Worthy or Season of the Hunt still might have that under its belt. But Revenant I don't think is good from either a story standpoint or a gameplay standpoint. The beginning of Revenant was very lackluster and just did not have any impact or weight behind it or any enjoyment. From a gameplay standpoint, getting Onslaught remastered and given to us in a different way was very very cool, but the fact that that was the only activity we got really for Act 1 was a problem. In Act 2, getting Contest of Elders and all of that was actually really nice. Going back was enjoyable, and the activity, while not super hard, was an enjoyable activity to go through a few times every now and again. But the fact that we didn't get it for Act 1 with Onslaught was a huge letdown and resulted in kind of a boring Act 1, and a lackluster Act 2 as what we got in Act 2 probably should have been in Act 1. The exotic mission and the exotic weapon that follows is also really mediocre. I feel like with the exotic mission from Echoes, that one was just a bit too long for my personal taste, but with the one from Revenant, nothing about it really stood out to me. The art direction, while interesting, wasn't game-changing or groundbreaking in any notable way, and the mechanics of the exotic mission were also kind of mid. The mirror thing was kind of cool at first, but as far as encounter and combat, the mirrors didn't add that much to them. And I do like the exotic shotgun. I do think it is very cool, actually. And as someone that mains Titan and enjoys his no backup plans every now and again, it's fun. I enjoy it, and it's actually pretty decent, all things considered. But where my biggest problem lies is the story with Revenant. I think it was a flop. So many things about Revenant just felt so off and not fully thought out, in my opinion. Starting with Aramis. I don't like Aramis, I will not lie to you. When she was thrown in prison, I would not have minded taking her out of that prison and throwing her into a ring to do a WWE cage match with her. I do not like her. But I don't really like how they justified taking her out of prison either. I understand that the point was that Aramis is one of the few Elixni that remembers old Reese, and Ido needed information in order to try and help her father. That is completely understandable. But the problem I have is how willingly Ido wants to take Aramis out of jail. The entire point is that Ido is naive but isn't ignorant or stupid. Even Ido would understand that Aramis is someone that should not be trusted by any means. So taking her out of prison and letting her loose inside of the last city is a very bad idea. There should have been some sort of push that wanted to make Ido take Aramis out of jail. It just felt so forced when Ido complained to Crow, as if Aramis was a completely innocent individual that people would have wanted to see free. And I understand that obviously Guardians and humanity is not innocent by any means, but Aramis, barely over a year ago, in Season of the Seraph, was more than willing to kill the Traveler for the sake of revenge and essentially doom humanity and in turn doom all of existence, as the witness would have gotten what it wanted and would have caused the final shape to take place. There has to be some sort of understanding that Aramis is a dangerous, angry, spiteful individual. So it would have been cool if perhaps, I don't know, Mithrax attacked someone in an outrage as Nezarec's curse had been affecting him to the point where he perhaps attacked someone. And that pushes Ido to be more desperate and willing to take Aramis out of jail to get the help that she needs to help her father. But instead, it just feels forced. And as far as talking about this goes, the ending is by far one of the most unsatisfying and lackluster endings I think I've ever seen in Destiny in general. Not the worst, but I just don't think it worked, man. Between Aramis getting the Echo and Mithrax getting the Kell of Kell titles in the way that he did, I just don't think it works. I'm not saying that Aramis had to suddenly become a good person and be our friend, but the fact that she is borderline the same person that she was before, that angry, spiteful individual that was willing to doom humanity on two different accounts for the sake of revenge and getting what she believed was hers, or the salvation, quote unquote, of her people. And she is the one that is chosen to rebuild her people's new home. It just doesn't feel right. I don't know. Perhaps, hear me out about this. Perhaps in Lightfall, because the Traveler uses the light on that pyramid ship that reawakens Nezarec, that accelerates Nezarec's curse on Mithrax, and that causes him to immediately transform and immediately allow Nezarec to control his body. And perhaps in a dungeon or in a random mission or in the raid, we have to kill Mithrax in order to make sure he doesn't hurt anyone, as he's completely out of control and and we have no way to save him. And so for a season or two, there's a morning and we have to see Ido try to take up her father's mantle and struggle to do so, as she is a scribe. She hasn't really been taught how to be a leader yet. But in perhaps the season before the final shape, or the beginning of the final shape, we see that Mithrax gets chosen by the Traveler and becomes the first ever Elixni Guardian, and is able to live out the prophecy of becoming the Kell of Kells, as he is the first ever Elixni chosen by their great machine. And then there's time dedicated to Ido teaching Mithrax who he was and who he has to be now, as he is the Kell of Kells. And then perhaps Revenant is based around Fikrul challenging him, and we need to find a way to kill Fikrul for a final time. And the episode ends with Ido being chosen by the Echo, but in turn gives it to Aramis to give her the chance to finally rebuild the home that she's been chasing after for so many years. And in doing so, Ido is finally given a moment of hope in her life for the first time in years. And while not liking us, does take the time to thank us and respect us, as we did do our best in order to help her people, and were part of the reason that Ido was able to give Aramis the Echo. And those that believe in the Great Machine, and those that think that Mithrax being chosen was its sign that the Elixni have a home in the Last City, stay behind and stay with Mithrax and the House of Light, while those that have been burned too much by the whirlwind and just have no trust for the Great Machine ever again decide to leave and go with Aramis to try and rebuild their home and get some semblance of safety on Reese Reborn, wherever it may be. But we don't get that. Instead, Aramis is chosen by the Echo for no discernible reason, and her last words to us can essentially be boiled down to, "I hate you and I never want to see you again," making it so that the person in charge of rebuilding their home is a spiteful, angry, despised individual that has no respect for us and that I have no respect for. So there's no sense of satisfaction in me seeing the Elixni get their home back, as the only person we know by name that we see leave to go get their home back is Aramis, someone I do not like. And Mithrax is chosen to be the Kell of Kells because no one else wanted the title. It didn't feel like Mithrax earned the title of Kell of Kells. It feels like the job application was given to other qualifiers but was refused and was in turn given to him. It doesn't feel like he earned it, it felt like it was handed to him because no one else wanted the title. It didn't feel earned, it didn't feel like a satisfying ending for any of the Elixni that we knew. It wasn't enjoyable, I didn't care for it. And in turn, it was probably one of the most lackluster and boring endings I think I've ever seen for a season type storyline. I did not enjoy it, and was even more lackluster was the fact that they made it so that you could do it in any order that you wanted, or without having the ability to write and organize the story in a way that it could be tackled in any way. So doing it back to back to back was incredibly weird and out of place. So as far as the Revenant story goes, I did not like it, I did not enjoy it, and I really don't have anything other to say than I just didn't like it. No offense to the writers, no offense to anyone that enjoyed it, but me personally, it was lackluster, it was unenjoyable, and I just didn't like it. I really didn't. The gameplay was fine once we got to Act 2, but otherwise, the tonic system was a whole fiasco. People arguing about craftable and sought-after roles and whatnot, and Bungie, doing Bungie stuff, resulted in a very odd episode that I just did not enjoy. I barely played it, and from what I saw from the outside, it didn't look very good. And yeah, Revenant wasn't good. I did not like it, personally. But at the time of this recording, Heresy has just come out, so there isn't really any reason to dedicate a whole section to it. I could just simply say what I want here, so I'll just do that. Heresy, as far as episode starts go, yeah, this is absolutely the best start to an episode that we've had. Eris actually dying was surprising. I did not expect that. And while we, the players, know that to a certain extent, Eris still lives, our character doesn't, Ikora doesn't, Salone and Drifter don't, and the acting, as far as the voice work goes for each of those that are there, is really good. Hearing Drifter's anguish and anger at the first ever person he's trusted in a very long time dying is real, it's palatable, and it really hits hard. Again, we know that Eris is still alive to some extent, but they don't. And they're acting it out really well, and I really enjoy it. As far as activities go, yeah, I like what they're doing with Heresy. Something notably different. I completely understand why someone that prefers typical, easy Destiny content would find this kind of annoying and unenjoyable. But as someone that does not mind a bit of difficulty here or there, I think it's fun. Actually having to worry about running a possible support build or something that genuinely helps your teammates survive is really nice, having to genuinely think about that instead of just running a support build for the sake of fun and then watching as your teammate goes through every single enemy in their way and then immediately heals themselves with like Liar's Handshake or a healing grenade. There is actually a reason to run a support build, and I like it. It's fun. And I don't mind the difficulty by any means. Now, I don't want all Destiny content to be as hard as this, I will admit. But as far as just, something to switch it up, something to have as a different alternative in case you want to play something different, I like this. I think it works. I think it's fun and enjoyable. As far as episodes go, this is definitely the best start to them. And it might continue that trend of Hive-related expansions or updates being some of the best ones, and I'm not complaining at all. But I believe I have wasted enough of your time. But thank you for being here as long as you have. I was originally planning on making this video at the end of Heresy to do a proper overview of all three, but I realized that everyone and their mother would probably be making videos doing that at the same time, and my content isn't particularly good, so it would very likely be redundant to do that then, and I wouldn't have anything special to make people come here specifically, or that would really make mine more enjoyable than anyone else's. So I thought it would be a better idea to try and do a sort of midpoint or a right before the finish line talk about it, a so far seeing how things are going, and then when everyone likely does their videos talking about the episodes once Heresy is over, mine will be done, and perhaps you will have enjoyed this by the time you get to this point of the video. I don't know. I don't think it's particularly good, but if you are here, thank you for taking the time to go all the way through the video. Episodes were kind of a miss, I won't lie. I don't think they were anything particularly good, and sometimes I think they were just kind of bad. This has obviously probably been the most hopeless time for Destiny ever. It's hard to hope for the future. It really is. But I already kind of made my eulogy kind of video for D2 from a previous D2 video, so there really isn't any reason to go over this again. It sucks seeing Destiny 2 kind of just slowly die. There is the potential for it to survive with Frontiers if that's a good enough update, but I will not hold my breath. I will simply hope and wait, because that's sometimes all you can do in life. So perhaps Destiny will get all the way to Frontiers and will recover in some way, shape, or form, or perhaps it'll die by the end of Heresy, and we will never get to see what comes afterwards. There's no telling. Again, thank you for taking the time to be here. I do really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a good day, a good night, and whatever goes on in your life goes right. Thank you for watching.